Close your eyes for a moment, just for a second, and try to imagine a city with no electricity, not a power outage, not a blackout you wait through, knowing the lights will come back. I mean a world where the lights were never there to begin with. No hum behind the walls, no glow from a screen in another room, no street lamp throwing orange light on wet pavement, just the city and the dark and whatever fire you could carry. This was the world of the 1870s, and it wasn't ancient history. It was the world of your great-great-grandparents, a world where evening didn't mean slowing down because you chose to. It meant slowing down because you had to. Because once the sun went down, the options were simple: candles, gas lamps, or darkness. And fire, which sounds romantic until you understand what it actually meant to depend on it. Fire was unreliable, expensive, and dangerous. Entire blocks of cities burned because of a single, poorly placed lamp. London, Chicago, Boston. Fire didn't just damage buildings, it reshaped skylines. The Great Chicago Fire of 1871 killed hundreds of people and destroyed more than 3 square miles of the city. And one of the causes? A lantern, a single flame, in the wrong place. So when people talk about the invention of electricity, they're not talking about a luxury. They're talking about something closer to safety, to freedom, to a world where the night didn't have to be the enemy. Into this world came 2 men, and they both looked at electricity and saw the future. But what they saw, how they saw it, those 2 visions were so different that the collision between them would become one of the defining conflicts of the modern age. One man's name you already know. The other man's name you think you know. But I'm willing to bet there's a lot about him that will surprise you. Thomas Alva Edison was born in 1847 in Milan, Ohio. And from the very beginning, he was the kind of person who made adults nervous. He asked too many questions. He conducted experiments in places experiments shouldn't happen, including famously in a moving train, where he once set a small fire in the luggage car. His teacher, after only 3 months, told his mother that the boy was addled, which was a polite 19th century way of saying his brain simply didn't work correctly. His mother pulled him out of school and taught him herself. That might have been the best thing that ever happened to him. By the time Edison was in his early 20s, he was already making a name for himself as an inventor. And by 1876, at the age of 29, he did something almost no one had done before. He built a place specifically for inventing things, a laboratory, a factory of ideas. He called it Menlo Park, New Jersey. It doesn't sound like the birthplace of the modern world, but that's exactly what it was. Edison assembled a team of engineers, machinists, and scientists, and he put them to work with one very specific mandate: invent things that people will buy. This is important because Edison is often described as a pure visionary, a lone genius in a lab coat, and that image is only half true. Edison was absolutely a brilliant thinker, but he was also a businessman, and a practical one. He didn't want to discover things. He wanted to build things. He wanted systems, infrastructure, products. And in 1879, he did the thing that made him famous forever. He made the light bulb work. Now, and I want to be careful here, because this is a place where the legend diverges from the history, Edison did not invent the light bulb. The concept had existed for decades. Other inventors had made bulbs that glowed, but they glowed for minutes or hours before burning out. What Edison invented was a bulb that lasted. A bulb that used a carbonized bamboo filament. after testing thousands of different materials that could burn for over 1,000 hours. He didn't invent light. He invented reliable light. But even that wasn't the real invention. The real invention was what he announced publicly in 1880, a complete electrical system. Not just a bulb, but everything the bulb needed to exist. Generators, wiring, switches, distribution networks. Edison wasn't selling a product. He was selling a world. The electricity in this world ran on direct current, DC. Electricity flowing in a single, steady direction, like water through a pipe. And in 1882, Edison opened the Pearl Street Station in Lower Manhattan, the first commercial electrical power station in the United States. Within a few months, it was powering hundreds of buildings in Lower Manhattan. The city, for the first time, had a heartbeat that didn't flicker. Edison was on top of the world, and that's when Nikola Tesla walked through his door. Nikola Tesla was born in 1856 in a small village in what is now Serbia, and his origin story has a detail that he himself always remembered. He was born during a thunderstorm. The midwife reportedly said this was a bad omen, that the child would be a child of darkness. His mother disagreed. She said, "No, he will be a child of light." Tesla grew up in a family of remarkable intelligence. His mother, Georgina, was illiterate, but she had an extraordinary memory, could recite entire books of Serbian poetry from memory, and invented her own household tools to make the farm run more efficiently. Tesla always said that everything he had, he got from her. He was a prodigious student. He could do calculus in his head. He could memorize entire textbooks in a single reading. He had what we might now recognize as photographic memory, and he also experienced something more unusual: vivid, involuntary mental visualizations. When he imagined a machine, he could see it, fully formed, rotating, functioning, in his mind. He could test it there. He could find its flaws before building it. He was also prone to hallucinations, nervous breakdowns, and a series of unusual phobias. He was afraid of pearls. He couldn't bear the sight of round objects or the smell of certain things. He needed to calculate the cubic volume of his food before eating it. He slept exactly 2 hours a night. He was, in short, not a man built for comfort. He was built for work. After studying in Austria and working briefly in Europe, Tesla sailed for America in 1884 with 4 cents in his pocket, a poem he'd written, a set of calculations for a flying machine, and a letter of introduction. The letter was addressed to Thomas Edison. Edison read it, and the famous line, though no one is entirely sure whether it was said exactly this way, was that the man who wrote it told Edison, "I know 2 great men. One is you. The other is this young man." Edison hired Tesla on the spot. For about a year, they worked in the same building, and they were, by most accounts, genuinely impressive to each other. Edison recognized Tesla's brilliance. Tesla admired Edison's ability to turn ideas into things. But there was a tension beneath the surface, a deep, structural tension. And it was about more than personality. It was about the nature of electricity itself. Edison's direct current system worked. That was the thing about it. It worked. You could build a power station, connect wires, and light up a neighborhood. He'd done it. It was real and proven, and people were already paying for it. But there was a problem that Edison knew about and didn't advertise. Direct current could only travel about a mile, maybe 2 if you pushed it. After that, the voltage dropped too much to be useful, which meant that if you wanted to power a city, you didn't build one power station. You built dozens, one for every neighborhood, one for every few blocks in the densest areas. This was expensive, it was complicated, and it placed a hard ceiling on how far electricity could ever spread. Rural areas, distant towns, entire regions of the country, they would never be connected under a direct current system. Not economically, not practically. Tesla knew this, and Tesla had an alternative. Alternating current, AC, was an entirely different way of moving electricity. Instead of flowing in one direction, it reversed itself, back and forth, many times per second. This sounds counterintuitive. Why would you want your electricity going backwards? But the physics of it created something remarkable: the ability to change voltage using a device called a transformer. Step it up high for long-distance travel, then step it back down for safe use in homes. Electricity could now travel hundreds of miles from a single source. Tesla hadn't invented AC. The concept existed before him, but he had done something no one else had managed. He figured out how to make it actually run motors. He designed a complete AC induction motor system that was elegant, efficient, and far more practical than anything that existed. When he tried to explain this to Edison, Edison's response was simple: no. Not because Edison didn't understand it. Edison understood it completely. His objection was practical and, in a certain light, reasonable. His entire business was built on DC. The infrastructure already existed. The investment was already made. Switching now would mean throwing away everything he'd spent years building. There was also the matter of safety. AC operated at higher voltages, and Edison, genuinely or strategically, argued that it was too dangerous for public use. He wasn't entirely wrong. High-voltage AC is more dangerous than low-voltage DC. But the question wasn't just which one was safer in isolation. It was which one was more capable of actually powering the world. Tesla left Edison's company in 1885. The official story is that Edison promised him a $50,000 bonus to overhaul the DC generator systems. And when Tesla delivered, Edison laughed. He told Tesla the offer had been a joke, that he didn't understand American humor yet. Tesla, by all accounts, did not find this amusing. He picked up his coat and walked out. What followed has been called many things: the Battle of Currents, the War of Currents, the Current Wars. It was a period from roughly 1887 to 1892, during which two electrical systems, DC and AC, competed not just in laboratories and boardrooms, but in newspapers, public demonstrations, and a deeply strange series of public events that are, even now, genuinely disturbing to read about. By 1887, Tesla had found a new partner, George Westinghouse, one of the most successful industrialists in America. Westinghouse had already revolutionized the railroad industry by inventing the air brake. He understood infrastructure, he understood scale, and when Tesla laid out the AC system for him, Westinghouse understood immediately what it could mean. He bought Tesla's patents and began building an alternative electrical empire. Edison responded, and the way he responded reveals something complicated about the man, something that sits uncomfortably alongside the image of the warm, cheerful inventor that history has mostly given us. Edison's campaign against alternating current was not primarily scientific. It was a public relations war, and it was brutal. He began writing papers and giving interviews claiming AC was fatally dangerous. He was not subtle. He called Westinghouse's system a system of slaughter. He urged cities to ban it. He lobbied legislatures. And then, and this is the part that tends to make people genuinely uncomfortable, he started killing animals. Edison's team, working with a man named Harold Brown, began conducting public demonstrations in which they electrocuted animals using AC current. Dogs, calves. In January 1903, in one of the most infamous events of the era, they electrocuted an elephant named Topsy at Coney Island in front of a crowd of hundreds and recorded it on film. The film still exists. I won't describe it in detail, but I will say this: it was presented not as cruelty, but as evidence, a public demonstration of how dangerous alternating current was. The intended message was clear. This is what AC does. Do you want this in your home? There's a grim irony in all of this, which is that the same campaign that was meant to prove AC was deadly also, accidentally, gave the world the electric chair. When New York State was looking for a more humane method of execution than hanging, Edison's team quietly contributed technical knowledge about how to use AC for precisely that purpose. The logic being, if AC is powerful enough to kill quickly, let it carry that association forever. Let it become synonymous with death. It was a remarkably cynical move, and it didn't work. The turning point came in 1893. The World's Columbian Exposition, the World's Fair, was held in Chicago, and the organizers needed to power it. This was not a small event. The Chicago World's Fair drew over 27 million visitors. It introduced Americans to new technologies that would define the next century: the zipper, the dishwasher, crackerjack, the Ferris wheel. It was a showcase of modernity itself, and the company that won the contract to light it would essentially be declaring to the world which electrical system the future belonged to. Westinghouse won the bid. He powered the entire fair with alternating current, 200,000 light bulbs, an illumination so spectacular that visitors called it the White City. People who had never seen electric light before stood in the darkness of evening and watched the fairgrounds glow, and they understood, in a way that no pamphlet or newspaper article could convey, that the world was changing. And then the following year came Niagara Falls. A consortium of investors wanted to harness the power of Niagara Falls and transmit that electricity to the city of Buffalo, 26 miles away. This was impossible under direct current. 26 miles was 20 times what DC could reach, but it was exactly the kind of problem AC was designed to solve. The contract went to Westinghouse and Tesla. In November 1896, electricity from Niagara Falls lit up the city of Buffalo for the first time. That was the moment the war effectively ended. Not officially, not quietly, but in every practical sense, alternating current had won. The ability to generate power in one place and deliver it across enormous distances was not just more efficient, it was a different category of capability entirely. It meant that electricity could, in theory, reach anywhere. Not just dense city centers, not just wealthy neighborhoods within walking distance of a generator, anywhere with wires. The world that Edison had imagined was a world of islands, each neighborhood its own system, connected only to itself. The world that Tesla and Westinghouse had built was a grid, interconnected, scalable, alive. History, as it turned out, was not especially kind to either man in the ways you might expect. Edison remained famous. He remained wealthy. He continued inventing over 1,000 patents in his lifetime and died in 1931 at the age of 84, celebrated, honored, and comfortable. The Edison we inherit from history is a hero, the Wizard of Menlo Park, the man who lit the world. What history tends to leave out is the war of currents. It tends to minimize the campaign against AC. It tends to present the loss of that particular fight as simply a matter of technology. The better system won, Edison moved on. The picture is cleaner than the reality. But here's the other thing worth noting. Edison was not stupid. He was not a villain. He was a man who had built something real and who fought to protect it and who used some tactics that he probably should not have used. He was human, which is to say, he was complicated. Tesla's story is different and harder. After Niagara Falls, Tesla should have been set for life. He had patents, fame, a partnership with one of the most successful industrialists in the world. But in 1895, his laboratory in New York City caught fire and burned to the ground. Everything he had been working on, years of notes, prototypes, experiments, was gone. He rebuilt. But the years that followed were a long, complicated story of brilliant ideas, insufficient funding, and a gap between what Tesla imagined and what the world was ready to build. He wanted to create a global wireless communication system, decades before radio, decades before the internet, and he built an enormous tower on Long Island to do it. The project ran out of money. The tower was eventually demolished. He filed patents for things that would only be understood fully decades later: radio transmission, radar, the principles behind modern AC motors. He claimed in later life to have invented a death ray, to have received transmissions from outer space, to have developed an earthquake machine. Some of these claims were the work of a still extraordinary mind pushing the edges of what was known. Others may have been the work of a man whose mental health had deteriorated severely. He died alone in 1943, in a hotel room in New York City, room 3327 of the New Yorker Hotel. He had been living there for years, largely in poverty, largely forgotten by the world that was running on the current he had helped design. He was 86 years old. He left behind no family, no estate worth speaking of, and a name that, at the time of his death, was known mostly to engineers. The rehabilitation of Tesla's reputation took decades. It came slowly, through the work of historians and scientists who began to trace the lineage of modern technology and found his fingerprints everywhere. Today, his name is on electric cars, on physics awards, on the unit of magnetic field strength. He has become, in the popular imagination, a kind of patron saint of unrecognized genius. Whether that image is entirely accurate is another question, but it's worth sitting with the distance between how the world treated him and what he gave it. Here's what I think is the most interesting thing about the war of currents. The thing that stays with me long after the dates and names start to fade. It wasn't really about electricity, or rather, it was about electricity, but electricity was the arena. The actual conflict was something older, something that shows up again and again in the history of technology, of business, of science. It was a conflict between two fundamentally different ideas about how the future should work. Edison's vision was, at its core, a vision of control, manageable, local, understandable, a system where the person who built it could see every part of it, could fix every part of it, could profit from every part of it. Direct current required proximity, and proximity meant oversight. It was a world where power, in both senses of the word, stayed close to home. Tesla's vision was, at its core, a vision of reach, scale, distance, connection between things that had never been connected before. Alternating current didn't care about proximity. It wanted to travel. It wanted to link a waterfall in upstate New York to a city 26 miles away, and then to the next city and the one after that. It was inherently a vision of interdependence. And here's the thing. Both of those instincts are rational. Both of them are, in different contexts, wise. The desire for control is not simply stubbornness. In a world where a single spark can burn down a neighborhood, in a world where the infrastructure you're building is new and untested, and people's lives depend on it. The instinct to stay close, to keep things manageable, to build only what you can understand and defend is not cowardice, it's prudence. But the desire for reach, the willingness to accept complexity in exchange for scale, to build systems that are harder to understand but capable of things no simpler system ever could be, that is also a legitimate and powerful thing. The war of currents, in the end, was settled not by logic but by consequence. The world needed to grow, and growth required scale. You flip a switch, light appears. It's so ordinary now that it takes a real effort of imagination to understand what that moment represents. But think about it for a second. The electricity flowing through the wires in your walls almost certainly traveled to your home over high-voltage transmission lines, stepped down through a series of transformers, delivered in alternating current at roughly the same frequency, 60 cycles per second, in the United States, that Tesla's system specified more than 100 years ago. The infrastructure of the modern world is, in many ways, his blueprint, but Edison's fingerprints are there too. The drive to make electricity a product, something reliable, something you pay for, something that works, that is Edison. The insistence on building systems that real people could actually use, not just demonstrate in a laboratory. The willingness to test 10,000 materials to find one that would last. That is Edison. The honest story of how electricity came to power the world is not a story with a hero and a villain. It's a story with two difficult, brilliant, flawed human beings who had different ideas and whose conflict produced something neither of them could have produced alone. What I find most worth remembering is this: Tesla died alone in a hotel room, largely forgotten, and the world he helped build was already humming around him without thinking of his name. Edison died celebrated, but one of the most consequential battles of his life was one he had lost. Neither of them got the ending they deserved, or perhaps the ending they expected. But the switch works, the light comes on, and somewhere inside that small, ordinary miracle, both of them are still present. Thank you for listening.